Have you ever experienced a moment that exists nowhere else but inside you? A span of time that never made it into a photograph, never became a story at a party, and never quite made sense when you tried to describe it. If you've ever lived through an hour where the laws of the world suspended themselves and left you changed, then you need to listen closely. Because this isn't a story about drama. It isn't about scandal. It's about that terrifying, fragile, beautiful space where human connection stops being a concept and becomes a physical weight. Once we step into this memory, there is no going back to who we were before. I still remember the exact second the frequency of the room changed. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It was quiet, like the sudden drop in pressure before a storm. Hold on just a moment before we continue. If this story is touching something in you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference and helps me bring you more stories like this one. I also want to hear from you. Write in the comments, where are you right now? Are you tucked away in a peaceful village where stars fill the sky, or surrounded by the hum and glow of a city that never sleeps? We were in the archives of the old theater building, the costume storage room beneath the stage. It was a space that smelled of cedar, old velvet, and decades of trapped dust. It was the kind of place you only went to if you were looking for something lost. That afternoon, 11 of us walked in. And when we walked out, we were entirely different people. The heavy iron door clicked shut. That sound, final and metallic, severed us from the rest of the university. Outside, the world rushed on. We could hear the muffled thrum of distant traffic, footsteps on the pavement above, life continuing its frantic pace. But inside, time simply stopped. The lighting was dim, filtered through high, grime-streaked windows, catching dust motes that floated in the air like suspended gold. We stood in the narrow aisle between racks of vintage coats, 11 of us in a space barely big enough for 4. The air grew warm, almost instantly. We were standing too close for it to be casual. Breaths mingled. Shoulders brushed against arms. No one flinched. No one apologized. The silence wasn't empty, it was heavy with waiting. Julian was the first to break the stillness. He didn't rush. He moved with a slow, deliberate gravity. His hand found mine, sliding into my palm the way he had done 100 times before, walking to the library, dragging me to breakfast. But this wasn't that. His thumb swept across my knuckles, slow and reverent, as if he were reading a map he'd memorized years ago. My hand relaxed, turning upward instinctively, an open invitation. When his fingers laced through mine, a jolt went through me, not shock, but a deep, resonant recognition. I didn't pull back. Neither did he. Around us, the atmosphere thickened. The teasing and the banter that had echoed in the hallway just minutes ago evaporated. Elias shifted on my left. I felt the solid heat of his arm pressing against mine. It grounded me. I could feel the rise and fall of his chest, syncing perfectly with my own. On my right, Cal reached for my other hand. His grip was tighter, his fingers trembling just slightly, a vibration of nerves and raw want that mirrored my own. You have to understand, none of this was accidental. We were seniors, teetering on the edge of the real world, 21 and 22 years old, terrified of the impending separation. These were 10 men who had become my orbit. They were the ones who debated philosophy with me until 4000 a.m., who carried my heavy equipment without asking, who showed up with coffee when I was breaking down. I knew them. I knew that Marcus picked at his cuticles when he was overthinking. I knew Silas sang under his breath when the silence got too loud. I knew exactly how dark Leo's eyes got when he was truly listening. We had never labeled what this was. We didn't need to. It lived in the long pauses, the protective stances, the way we gravitated toward each other in crowded rooms. Consent wasn't a question, it was the foundation of the air we were breathing. Declan moved behind me. I felt the warmth radiating from him before he even touched me. He placed his hands lightly on my waist, not to hold me still, but to let me know he was there. Then, he leaned down, his forehead resting gently against the curve of my neck. He didn't kiss me. He just breathed there, a long, shaky exhale that sent shivers down my spine. That was the moment I knew. We weren't leaving this room unscathed. It was 15 p.m., the turning point. Julian lifted my hand, the one he was still holding, and brought it to his face. He didn't kiss the skin. He pressed his cheek against my palm, closing his eyes, leaning into my touch as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. His vulnerability broke me open. I squeezed his hand. Yes, a ripple moved through the group. It wasn't hurried. It felt like a choreographed dance we had all learned in our sleep. Elias turned toward me, tilting my head up with a touch so gentle it felt like a ghost. My heart was hammering against my ribs, loud enough to echo. Time stretched thin, and just before he leaned in, I realized the truth. This wasn't about lust. This was about witnessing. When his lips brushed mine, it wasn't a demand. It was a question, soft searching, terrified that the answer might be no. I answered by leaning into him. The room seemed to sigh, a collective release of tension we hadn't realized we were carrying. Elias pulled back inches, his eyes searching mine, his thumb tracing my cheekbone as if making sure I was real. I felt the others watching not as spectators, but as guardians. Kale stepped in next. He didn't try to take Elias's place, he created his own. His eyes were wide, unguarded. When he kissed me, it was slow and achingly sweet, his hands cradling my face like I was something made of glass. In that kiss, I felt a desperate kind of gratitude. He wasn't taking from me. He was giving me everything he had. Each of them brought a different piece of the soul into that circle. Mateo moved close enough that his jacket brushed my arm. He kissed the corner of my mouth, then my jaw, whispering something in Spanish that I felt rather than heard, a prayer, or a thank you. Marcus didn't kiss me at all. He simply pressed his forehead against mine and stood there, eyes squeezed shut, shaking. When he finally brushed his lips against my temple, it felt like a vow. Declan, still behind me, wrapped his arms fully around me now, pulling me flush against his chest. It wasn't confining, it was an anchor. He rested his chin on top of my head, surrounding me. Silas took the hand Kale had released and kissed each finger, one by one, methodically, quietly, honoring the connection. Adrian's kiss on my cheek was playful, but underlined with a deep sadness, the kind that comes with knowing things are ending. Then there was Ronan. He caught my eye from the edge of the circle, that crooked, shy smile appearing for a second. He stepped in and kissed me fully, confident, warm, earthy. And somehow amidst 10 men, I never felt overwhelmed. I felt held. The language of the room became touch. Fingers threading through hair, palms resting on backs, thumbs circling wrist. Every touch was a question, every stillness was an answer. I am here. I see you. You are safe. Eventually, gravity won. We sank down onto the floorboards, amidst the dusty velvet coats and forgotten props. I sat with my back against the wall, and the circle collapsed inward. I ended up leaning against Julian's chest, his arm draped loosely over my knees. Elias lay on his back with his head in my lap, looking up at the ceiling. Kale sat shoulder to shoulder with me, our fingers still tangled together. The others filled the gaps, a puzzle of limbs and hearts, close enough that I could hear 10 different rhythms of breathing. We didn't talk about finals or jobs or the scary, looming future. We talked about the things that actually matter. Mateo spoke first. He told us about the voicemail his father left him, the first time the man had said, "I love you," in a decade. He wiped his eyes and no one looked away. Marcus recited a stanza of poetry he'd been too scared to submit to the lit journal. His voice cracked on the final rhyme, and we let the silence hold him up. Declan admitted he was terrified of becoming boring, that he was scared he would lose the fire he felt right now. Silas hummed a melody, a low, mournful tune that vibrated through the floorboards. It was a song about leaving, and I cried. Quietly. Not from sadness, but from the sheer relief of being known so completely. They just held me tighter. Hours evaporated. Sometimes there were soft kisses, lazy, unhurried brushes of lips against skin. Sometimes just silence. The light in the high windows shifted from sharp afternoon white to a deep, bruised purple, then to twilight blue. The sharp edge of desire had softened into something ancient. A feeling of tribe, of home. At some point, the room ceased to be a storage closet. It became a pocket universe. The dust mote stopped moving. The world outside didn't exist. We were suspended in amber. Julian's hand was absent, mindedly tracing patterns on my arm. Elias was tracing the lines of my palm. Marcus spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. He said he felt like he had spent his whole life watching through a window, and today was the first time someone had opened the door. Kale confessed that he didn't know who he was without this group. "I don't know how to be this version of myself out there," he said. The honesty hung heavy in the air because we all felt it. We were better versions of ourselves in this room. Braver, softer. Eventually, they looked at me. Not expecting anything, just acknowledging me. I told them the truth, that I had never felt beautiful until I saw myself through their eyes. That their care made me feel powerful, not fragile. That I was afraid I would spend the rest of my life trying to find a love that felt this safe. Tears fell hot and fast. They didn't hush me. They didn't try to fix it. They just witnessed it. And in that witnessing, I healed. The energy shifted one last time. It settled. The kisses stopped. The touches became still. A hand on a shoulder. A head on a knee. We laughed a little, finally. Elias made a joke about how we'd all need chiropractors after sitting on this hard floor. Adrian laughed that this was definitely not in the graduation brochure. But the laughter was soft, reverent. We watched the last of the light fade. The room was nearly dark now, illuminated only by the faint glow from the street lamps outside creeping through the glass. We knew it was time. Not because we wanted to leave, but because the moment was complete. To stay longer would be to try and possess it, and we knew better. The first person to move was Ronan. He didn't stand up immediately. He just shifted, stretching his legs, breaking the spell gently. We stood up in stages, stiff limbs cracking joints. We didn't rush apart. We lingered. The hugs were long, fierce embraces. Elias lifted me off the ground for a second, squeezing tight. Marcus buried his face in my hair and breathed in. Cale held my face in his hands and whispered, "Always. You know that, right? Always." Julian was the last. He smoothed my hair back, his eyes searching mine in the dim light. He kissed my forehead, long and deliberate. "We're ready," he said. We walked to the heavy iron door. When we pushed it open, the cool evening air rushed in, smelling of rain and asphalt. It felt jarring. We walked out into the quad, 11 shadows under the streetlights. We didn't walk in a rigid formation, but we moved as one entity. Shoulders bumping, hands brushing. To anyone passing by, we were just a group of students leaving the theater, but we knew. We carried an invisible tether between us. A secret history. Life moved on, as it always does. We graduated. We scattered to different time zones. Some of them got married. Some didn't. Some climbed corporate ladders, others got lost in art. We got older. We got busier. But every now and then, usually when the light hits a certain way in the late afternoon, I'm back there. I'm back in the dust and the velvet. I remember the sound of breathing in the dark. I remember hands that asked permission before they touched. I remember what it felt like to be fully seen without being consumed, to be wanted without being owned, to be loved with a ferocity that demanded nothing in return. People talk about the traumas that break us. They don't talk enough about the quiet moments that put us back together. That afternoon didn't change my career or my address, but it changed the architecture of my heart. Because for a few hours, 10 men and 1 woman created a world where the only law was kindness. And that kind of love, it doesn't fade. It becomes the standard by which you measure everything else. I smile now, because I know exactly who I was when the door clicked shut. And I know I've never truly been alone since.